Hello, everyone. Today we're having a podcast, and I'm with our guest, Anmol Singh. And today we're talking about our experiences with autism and things like anxiety and depression. So, would you like to tell us a bit about some of your experiences, Anmol?
Sure. First of all, it's completely my pleasure to be here. And thank you so much for taking this initiative and getting both of us together, and so that we can actually connecting and sharing knowledge, experiences, and some of the very realistic and real life bad, dark days where we were down and we actually got an insight into autism and how I was diagnosed and my experiences with depression. So thank you so much. It's really wonderful to be here, and it's completely my honor. So as you asked about my experiences, I guess it was my experiences with depression started when it was the year 2018, and I was in my early 20s. I was kind of 21 years of age, and I realized that I'm depressed, I'm sad, I'm really low, and things don't seem to be framing well, and my daily routine, my work wasn't directional, wasn't channelized, and I seemed to be distracted, and things were really not the way it should be. My life had turned upside down. Everything was topsy turvy, and I did not have anybody to speak to. And certainly, with the passage of time, I realized that there were things that really helped me through, and like there were factors, there were reasons which caused depression, and further, it led to anxiety, it led to mental health issues, and it all gave me the reasons that I should go for a diagnosis, I should contact my psychologist and have a session and actually express myself what is really wrong. Eventually, I was diagnosed with certain traits of autism, and I was told that I do reveal, I exhibit a few traits, a few qualities of Asperger's syndrome. I was depressed back in the year 2018. I used to get sleepless nights, inadequate sleep, suicidal thoughts, nobody to talk to, lack of energy, and a feeling of sadness, gloominess, emptiness. There was a feeling of feeling irritated. I think there were a lot of factors and reasons which contributed into that. Some of them were like an unfair treatment, being treated unfairly in a social circle, having been abused emotionally, having scored very low academically, and not performing well in the college, uh, uh, being emotionally abused, past experiences of the teenage life where I had dark days, uh, days where I was bullied. There were a lot of factors, someone yelling at me, rage, I think it really contributes in causing depression. And it is a matter of fact, I must say it, that according to the World Health Organization, actually 5% of the people in the world are suffering from depression. And that's a big number. That's millions of people.
Yes, I think I've heard that suicide is probably is one of the most common causes of death among people on the autism spectrum.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of people
And
who end up committing suicide.
there's that's true. And I must mention, during this COVID-19 pandemic, you'll be surprised to know that people aged between 18 to 25, that was an exact, I have the numbers, that was 56.2% people, they actually committed suicide. But like people who were this young, were this much young, they actually committed suicide during the COVID-19 pandemic. That's
Oh
the
wow!
highest.
You said 56%. Did you say?
Yeah.
Wow, that's very high, isn't it? Wow, that's more than half.
Yes.
Yeah.
And not just that, but there are other reasons, family reasons, genetic reasons. And I must mention that depression is not just a term, it is a phase, it is actually big disorders. It is a real life disorders with various stages, and it has to be taken seriously with all the humility, with all the humbleness, with all the care, and it is as important as our physical health. So, mental health is to be taken as important as our emotional well being, as our physical well being, as our mental and anxiety and depression problems are. There are some steps, some therapies which really help the people to go through. And when I meet people who are depressed, I find that they are their bodies, their state of mind, they actually need a deep rest. And as Jim Carrey says, the very famous Hollywood actor, which we all have seen on screens, I think he very directionally said it in an interview. Depression, which he, in his perspective, is that body is our particular character, and we are tired of doing it, and we need deep rest. Depression is deep rest, and we need it so that we can actually get out of it and live our life much more happily and in a much more smiling way. And you'll be surprised to know one of the very famous Asian countries, that is South Korea, that is ranked at number four in most number of suicide cases in the world. It has most fourth number of highest suicide cases in the world. That's pretty high, and
Yeah.
that takes me by surprise. That actually people commit so much of suicide by depression, by problems, and there is actually a lot of suffering.
Yeah. So yeah. So like, what's the number one highest? Do you know?
I think. I think number one. I think the ranking has changed pretty much now. Earlier that was Lebanon, and but now, as of now, I think the ranking has slightly slipped, and the countries seem to have managed and changed things and taken steps to live life more happily. Certainly, if you look at the Europe, Netherlands, Sweden, Finland, these are some of the happiest countries in the world. There's a place in Canada. It's called Calgary. It is by far, I think, second or the third best city to live in. People are so happy over there. Like they wish each other for nothing. They have smiling faces. They're helpful. They're kind, and I don't see anybody, people actually committing suicide at a mass level, at a huge level, giving huge numbers to the government.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I have also experienced a lot of anxiety, especially. I mean, I tend to. I have always experienced high levels of anxiety. Honestly, I used to especially get stressed and worried about what others thought of me, and I felt like I was really terrified of my autism coming out in public because I felt like everyone would then be paying attention to me.
Oh,
Yeah, so I would constantly be putting on an act and trying really hard to pretend to be normal, but if it came out, I would become really, really stressed out.
I genuinely believe there are some CBT, which stands for cognitive behavioral therapy. There are some antidepressants. There are some breathing exercises. There
Yeah,
are some ways for deep meditations and feeding mind with that positivity and that proper treatment that can actually help and cure and level up the problem, that can actually help the person through the problem, and give a much satisfactory output and result. Certainly, as you mentioned about your anxiety, I must mention anxiety to me is like almost every day,
yes,
and it can be any time of the day. It can be 4 in the morning, It can be 7 in the evening. It can be 12 in the afternoon. It has no time. It has no calendar. And and the one thing which really shakes me is that even after trying, even after the individual, or for that matter, any patient or any disorder you're going through, especially if you're talking about depression or this anxiety, it basically can affect any individual. It has no age, it has no calendar, it has no place. This disorder, this phase, this condition, it doesn't recognize the nationality of an individual. Uh, Childhood, even there have been young girls, there have been people who were just who have just entered into childhood. I have met people who are just 5 or 6 years of age, and they say that I was depressed since the age of 5. I'm depressed from the age of 8. I was abused from the age of 6. And I feel so gloomy and I feel so shaken when I see that people in the world are not so respectful and they don't understand this. They feel that just physical pain is everything. But no, there are things much beyond that. The foundation is way broader than that, and people actually need to expand their perspectives and understand that mental health and emotional well-being is actually more important and equally important as being physically harmed.
Yes. Yes, very much so. Have you ever taken any antidepressants, or do you take
Wow.
breathing? How do you manage anxiety and depression?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I really love it. First of all, I haven't gone for antidepressants. No, I haven't chosen that. Secondly, to me, I try to breathe. I try to go in an open space. I try to go or change my place of position. And for example, I choose to go on the terrace of my house, or I try to do breathing exercises. I try to close my eyes and do meditative exercises. I try to listen to some calm and composed music. I try to listen. And personally, what I find interesting is what helps me personally is listening to the soundtracks of rainfall, going to looking at the sky, because sky, when I look at the sky, it makes me feel that it has really no limits. Twinkling stars, gleaming sky, the luminous moon, everything feels so silent, so calm. And the rapid heartbeat, that few seconds of anxiety, that temporary period of time from where a person goes through, I think that is something only a mental health patient can understand, only an individual can understand who is on the spectrum. That feels like next to death. It feels like maybe if I would have chosen death, that would have been better than this anxiety. That feels better than anything. And certainly it feels worse and hopeless. Uh, I have personally experienced it on a regular basis. I was suggested by one of my online friends that I should do some breathing, but definitely it takes time to cure. And being in a social circle, and one of the things that I really appreciate is the Ayurvedic treatment, the Ayurvedic medicines, the therapies, and how relaxing it is. And definitely, it gives a much better result than expected.
I actually have also done breathing exercises, and I found,
Wow.
yes, I found that I remember having counselling and being told you can't be stressed, you can't be anxious and relaxed at the same time. It's like if you're actually anxious, then you're naturally going to be stressed. So if you try to do breathing exercise and try to be relaxed, then you're more likely to be able to rationalize your own thoughts. I also do have a weighted blanket as well and a weighted hoodie, which basically helps put tight pressure on me and helps me to relax, I think.
Wow, that is interesting. That's nice to know. That's I think that's a personalized solution for somebody, but definitely that's really good. Hoodie is really interesting. It can be really helpful to someone, irrespective of age, and it actually costs nothing. Like just an individual needs to purchase it. Also, I believe there are various types of uh, workshops and breathing, various types of breathing exercises also, like Wim Hof breathing, holotropic breathing. I think every type of breathing with a mentor, that can be really really helpful, especially if it is blended, if it's combined with the yogic exercises. I think that's natural than anything, and that actually helps to relieve stress, because yoga is something that is being done from past thousands of years, and when that is done, I think uh, that helps, that reduces the stress levels up to a massive level, not just hardly, but up to a massive level. And if it is done regularly under the guidance with correct knowledge. By the way, Alex, I have a question.
Yeah.
Since you're an anime fan and you like to watch Star Wars, do you know any fictional character who was depressed and who helped itself to go through and eventually live a much better life than before, or for that matter, a depressed fictional character who died of anxiety and depression and had to lose its life eventually?
I certainly think that Shinji from Evangelion portrays a lot
Wow,
of depression.
Evangelion. Have you seen that anime?
Yes, you haven't seen it, have you?
Not yet.
No, it's quite an old one. It's from like the 90s.
Wow. I ask this because I think somewhere anime also has a psychological impact on mental health, and which we actually feel realistic when we are into the anime.
Yeah,
Certainly, if there is a character who has gone through this, who has faced it, that can actually help someone beat anxiety and depression in real life as well. And I think anime is something which people really love, especially in the Asian part of the uh, world, and the Europe. It is rising in Europe, and in the North Wales, like you really like it, and there are other people. So that's why I asked, because anime and cartoons, that is something children really love. So that can be impactful and helpful.
when it comes to autism, even I can think of a lot of characters who display autistic characteristics.
Right. Like one of my favorite, like my very favorite character, who I believe is on the autism spectrum, is Ryuzaki from Death Note.
Oh yes,
Uh, I think the way he investigates, his thinking skills, and how broadly his perspectives go to investigate the case, that's really appreciable and remarkable. That is something I find really interesting. And I think the one more anime which I really like, that's Violet Evergarden.
oh yeah.
There's a character. There's a character where whom I find is autistic.
I actually meant
Yeah.
yeah, I mentioned this in my anime autism video.
Oh,
Characters who
yeah.
are autistic in anime, and I felt like she had a lot of autistic-like traits.
Right. Personally, what I believe is having such issues of anxiety, which includes rapid heartbeat, having a fear of uneasiness, and being bullied. I think it's like a chain. I see this as a chain of a chain of events that goes on: anxiety, depression, and eventually such issues that lead to autism, and that the person's a life gets deteriorated up to some level, not able to give our best in situations and careers. So that is something to be really monitored, and we need to be vigilant about it.
Have you ever felt depression over feeling different from others, or have you ever found that people figure out that you're different from everyone else?
That's a really wonderful question. Nobody has asked me before. I'm glad that I'm being asked such a question. I remember back when I was 16, I was promoted to the new class, sitting in the classroom of my school. It was uh, it was an environment with new children, new faces, a new vibe, a different atmosphere, and everything was so good. Everyone was smiling. Got promoted. Suddenly, I was sitting alone on a bench, and my head was down. I was looking down. I was gloomy. I was befuddled. I had a befuddled state of mind, and I was like looking down. I didn't know why was I sad, and I was just 16. I did not know how to communicate it. And one of the classmates saw that, and he very gently approached me and asked me, "Oh, what has happened to me? Why am I so down?" And I said, "I don't know." I firmly said, "I don't know," because I don't know. I felt like I'm in a dilemma. I was confused. I was amused. I did not know what to say. Uh, but eventually, I got adjusted in the environment, and I think this has happened twice or thrice with me in my senior secondary classes, and I've I've always wanted that there was someone who can really help me through, and finally I decided to take some steps towards it and solve this problem eventually. And that's a moment when I felt that I am different from others. Like my way of asking questions in the class, I used to ask more questions, especially in the science and mathematics, because that used to fascinate me. My
Yes.
questions were more than anybody else. I was super excited. I I had that curiosity, that zeal for knowing things in depth, and certainly there were like such behaviors which made me feel that I am different from others. I love to be myself rather than being in a social circle and go with the flow, because I believe any individual should be itself, should explore itself rather than acting like a sheep and do what others do in a crowd. And that's what I experienced, that's what I felt. And like my way of understanding and processing and delivering the concepts, looking at the things the other way around, that was something that was something different. That was something which made me unique and out of the blue and out of the crowd, actually.
Yes. I also, I think, would tend to ask a lot of questions when I was in these kind of environments, especially if it was a subject of real interest. I do remember in Sunday school I would tend to answer the questions a lot and also ask. I was one of the more inquisitive kids in the Sunday school.
So, like, how did you manage with it? Did you feel that someday you'll be teased on this or something like that?
Not really. They,
Mhm.
I mean, in that environment, they were all nice.
Because naturally, I think there are some nasty children in every public place. That's a part of life. But what I genuinely believe is everyone's personal space and perspective and implementing of thing should be respected.
Yeah.
And like it's a personal choice how an individual wants to live and implement things. That may look a little unique, but that doesn't give the right or license to the other individual that he or she should bully the respective individual
Oh no. Yeah.
in an environment.
Yes. Bullying, I think it also causes a lot of depression and
Yeah, of course it
yeah,
does.
yeah. I think that also sometimes leads to suicide when people are bullied.
Yes, at a major level, and that makes me go squeaky because such things are a very sad and a very bad reality in today's world. We just can't. People just can't seem to do anything. They just feel frozen, and they think that there is no way, there is no ray of hope. It's just darkness, and eventually, the thing is, they don't. They seem blocked to communicate it, and things don't seem to work out in a way. But eventually, there are things, there are laws which a person can take for self-defense and live respectfully with dignity and the satisfaction. Because I think one's life is our in its own hands, and it's a responsibility.
I think that there's way too much bullying going on. I've not really experienced too much bullying. I did experience some online at one point. But face to
Well,
face, I did. When I went to children's groups, I mean, I was homeschooled for most of my school years, and when I went to groups, I was accompanied by an adult. Um,
let me tell you, one out of three children in the United States have experienced bullying as
yeah,
a victim.
yeah, that's very very serious. Yeah,
And I don't know how difficult it is for the children to smile, not just in the US, but all over the world who feel bullied. But all I can say is have faith, not give up. Life is worth living, and everyone has a hustle, has dark days, and you can actually learn from it and grow back up again.
yes, very much so. Yeah, I mean, I do remember things like, say, if I was in a group of kids my age, and they would tend to they would tend to talk as if I wasn't there. In some
Oh,
cases, I remember being in scouts and two boys were talking about these types of food that they'd made, and they were really like some really strange food. And I think I joined in saying, "Oh wow, that sounds like a very interesting thing to make." And then they basically just looked at me like, "Yeah," and then they just carried on talking to each other. Like they always like, "Okay, yeah, you're not invited here." Yeah, that was.
what was the food like? What was the food about?
I can't remember exactly. It was just kind of it was just something that they were talking about. But
Okay.
yeah, they didn't really seem to want me to join in with that conversation, which, and at the time I was kind of like, fine then. I guess I'll just sit here by myself. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so that's an odd moment. Felt
Yeah.
odd. If you would like to share, if you had any experiences in your college days where you were given some comments or someone tried talking to you or someone observed that you're having stimming or some unusual leg movements or rocking movements while you're sitting, something like that. Someone observed or someone told you something, because that is very obvious for an individual who is not on the autism spectrum, who doesn't understand autism, to feel surprised.
Yeah.
And so, an experience from your college.
I think in college, stimming, I tended, if I really wanted to really go for stimming, like really go for it, I would tend to go to a room by myself. I would still likely stim a bit in front of others as well. I mean, I've probably stimmed a little bit even during this.
Okay.
I think that
That can freak out the other individual.
yeah,
Someone can think Alex is attempting to kill me.
yeah, I don't think in college I got many people commenting on the stimming really, as far as I remember. I think I've had people say like, "Oh, are you cold or something?" Like, what's that twitch thing that you're doing? Like, are you shivering? Like, what is that? I sometimes get those kind of things I'm asked. I think in college I actually didn't tend to socialize that much in college. During the breaks, I would tend to just keep my distance from others, and I would tend to only interact when we were actually into groups doing the filming. If you know what I'm saying.
Alexander, would you like to share your opinion, your thought, if you see someone who is depressed, someone who tells you that, Alexander, I'm comfortable sharing this with you only, and I want to share that I am really depressed and I get anxiety on a regular basis. How will you help that individual?
I probably suggest that they see a specialist to try and an expert in it to try to actually find out about how they can cope with their depression. If they were experiencing anxiety, I might suggest breathing exercises and things like this. What would you do?
I would give the individual some suggestions, some very good solutions, recommendations, to try talking to that person and try to understand the problem. And if I have if I've experienced it before, I would certainly choose to help the individual through. I can always be available for that individual if he or she is in trouble in near future or in future anywhere. Depending upon the problem, I think the help varies accordingly. I think visiting a psychiatrist
Yeah,
definitely helps for sure. That is
yeah,
by far, I think, one of the best.
yes. They're
Best of
the
the best.
experts. Yeah. If I had experienced the things they're going through, I probably would mention that as well and how I learned to deal with it. Anyway, I think it's time we bring this to a close now.
Right. So, anything you choose to say at last to wrap up the conversation? It was wonderful being with you.
Thank you all for watching. If you've experienced high levels of anxiety and depression, please do feel free to comment some of your suggestions and experiences in the comments below, and please do give the video a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button and then hit the notification bell. Only if you want to, of course. You don't have to, but if you want to keep up to date with future videos, that would be recommended. If you'd like to see more podcasts, please do let me know.
Thank you so much, everyone. It was wonderful being here, and I hope this podcast really helps someone in need. And it was wonderful connecting with Alex Lowry, who has taken this initiative and helping for taking this podcast and helping spreading knowledge to all the viewers who are watching this. And just a small message that your mental health is of utmost importance. Just don't ignore it. If you really care about it, take preventions, take steps, take actions, and beware of what's happening around you, because it is actually a serious issue. So just take care, stay happy, and goodbye for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.